evening. My name is John, and we're here with Steve Dollins. And this is a timely subject, and it's solar power. And I think we can talk about all kinds of the new stuff that's happened the last couple of years, and also I think now power with the PG&E power outage stuff for the it makes it more now, instead of just a cost saving things, it's a mission critical thing, at least from our perspective on that. And tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, SunnyCal has been doing solar now for quite a few years, and over the time we've seen a number of transitions. And we're certainly, as an industry, in a transition point now. Transitioning from what historically has been simple, grid-tied, spin your meter backwards kind of solar power,
right,
to reduce your bill or eliminate
right,
your bill, into a situation now more and more where battery backup is desired, so that during the times when the power fails or perhaps the power's turned off, you still have the power to do things like pump water,
right,
flush the toilet, and those kinds of things.
Right.
And more people are coming in asking about solar, but really wanting to know how they can get backup capability.
Right. Now, a question as far as sizing. People want to know is how, I guess the normal stuff on cost and sizing and everything else. Is there ways to do it a smaller system to keep some of the stuff running, kind of like a little backup generator, or then a full house system? I mean, how do you attack the sizing problem?
Boy, you hit the hot button right on the head. The battery backup is a blessing and a curse.
Right.
It's great when the power comes back on, you're living off of batteries, but it becomes a curse when without your knowledge, you've been using too much power.
Right.
And a couple hours into the outage, your batteries are dead. So sizing the system and sizing the batteries and setting the customer's or user's expectation is vitally important.
You don't want to run the electric clothes dryer during the outage type of stuff, right?
Yeah, I had a gentleman in my office today that bought a solar system from us, and he was disappointed, fair I would say, because the solar system battery backup only lasted 8 to 10 hours. And I had to tell him, Bill, you got to understand, you're not off grid.
Right.
You just have a battery backup. So people have to become more in tuned to where the power's going. And if you're in a hunker down mode because the grid's down,
right,
you got to realize you might be trading off, doing a load of laundry for keeping your fridge going for the rest of the night. So you got to decide which one's most important to you.
Now, do you do any of the generator systems as well, or are you mostly solar and storage?
We do solar. We do solar with batteries for storage, and we also frequently include a generator when we have storage. Right. Because quite frankly, it's cheaper to put in maybe a smaller battery that might last 8 or 10 hours, and then have a generator for the 2 or 3 times a year when you've exhausted your batteries, but maybe the sun's not shining. Right. So having that generator can be a real comfort factor. And we encourage people, actually.
Or go back to the clothes dryer scenario. So if somebody wants to do flip the generator on if you're going to be under high load for several hours or something like that, is that type of thing, or no?
No, that certainly is. Yeah. That's valid. In fact, we've had some customers that will come in looking for a solar system and end up actually just buying a power inverter system with batteries, and using the generator, running the generator, which they typically already have, a couple hours a day to top off the batteries, and then they just coast through the night on that charge. Yeah. And they don't even worry about solar panels. Right. In some occasions.
Well, we've probably veered off a little bit here. Now, for people who are new to solar and maybe and realize that, okay, this is something I need to do now. What are the components of the typical system now, and what are we, as you mentioned before we started, typical rooftop, garage, what?
So the components of the typical system, to just spin your meter backwards, are the solar panels, solar array, we call them modules, but the solar array and the power inverter, those are the 2 critical things. Okay. You'll harvest the energy from the sun, and the power inverter will create the power that you can use, or spin your meter backwards if you don't use it. Real simple model there. Right. When you add batteries, it gets more complex, technically quite a bit more complex, but now the solar power that's produced will charge your batteries first. Then the excess power will be available to you, and finally, any excess beyond that spins your meter backwards.
A question. Maybe I'm wrong, but from looking from the outside, is a few years ago, this was a system where people really had to know and watch their systems. You know, if you had an old lead acid system that you need to manage the batteries on and stuff. Now hasn't the charge controllers and the software, you know, the brains of these systems, hasn't it gotten much better at, you know, so in a weird way, as the systems get more complex, maybe the user interaction is even less? Is that accurate to say, or something? Is that?
I think it is accurate to a certain extent, maybe in a different way than you might think. First off, at the high level, technology has reached solar equipment as well. We have Bluetooth connected equipment. We have equipment that'll text you when your batteries are getting low. Well, they'll tell you, you got a message, it's time to do maintenance on the batteries. But far and away, the thing that's improved the situation and the manageability most is the reduction of traditional flooded lead acid battery use and their replacement with good lithium batteries.
Got it.
The flooded lead acid batteries would outgas, you'd have to add water to make up for that. They would corrode your cables. I mean, things after a couple of years could get really nasty if you didn't take care of them. Lithium, on the other hand, it's maintenance free. There's no liquid to add. There's no outgassing. And last but not least, the lithium batteries don't mind being very heavily discharged and then recharged.
Got it.
Something that lead acid batteries didn't like.
Got it.
So with the modern lithium systems, you can run them dead almost every day of the week, and the batteries will still last you 10 years.
Very
nice. That was not the case with flooded
So
batteries.
that's what's changed the storage component. You know, it's the wall mount garage thing rather than a separate shed full of golf cart batteries. Huh? Is that?
That's certainly close. And we actually install the lithium batteries and all that equipment outside now.
Okay.
So attached to the house, but outside, so it's close to the breaker panels and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it's much more manageable. The high tech is facilitating a lot of the out of sight, out of mind kind of, you know, maintenance capability.
I guess sizing, I know we talked about, is how many kW is the typical house system? I mean, how big are, I mean, what's the typical system now?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Depends on what size to need?
It depends on how much power you use.
Okay.
We've seen 1,000 square foot houses that maybe need only a 2,000 or 3,000 watt system. We call them Ks, 2K or 3K. But the same size house, just a different lifestyle, might require 6 or 8K.
Right.
You can't simply go, particularly in old houses,
right,
by the square footage. The newer, more modern houses, it's a little bit easier. The real way, and we have solar classes at our store, and this is the first thing that we talk people through. How big a system do you need? And it's really pretty easy. When you look at your utility bill, you're sold electricity by the kilowatt hour.
Right.
You buy gasoline by the gallon, you buy
right,
electricity by the kilowatt hour.
Right.
And every month you'll use so many kilowatt hours, and that's what they'll base your bill on. They'll calculate how much you've used. And you can look at that kilowatt hour number for the month. It's real easy. Divided by 155, that's the size solar system you need.
Got it.
Because that's how many productive, what I call noontime equivalent hours there are in a month.
Got it.
And it'll spit out a number. And for most people, you know, two adults, 2 children, fairly modern house, it'll tell you need a 6.5 or a 7K system.
Got it.
But 155 is the number.
Is there, you know, some of the stuff, is there any difference really in the panels now much between like some of the buzzwords like a polycrystalline or a mono, or is that mostly just buzzword stuff, or is it?
Well, there are basically 3 major types of solar panels, but the key thing is, if you buy a 300 watt solar panel, be it polycrystalline or monocrystalline, you're getting a 300 watt panel.
Got it.
Now, it might need to be a little bit bigger, physically, not generally very much, but You buy a system or a panel based on the wattage rating, and then that's what you'll get.
That's what you'll get.
Now, monocrystalline might cause the power production to be a little bit higher when the temperature is really hot, because heat's kind of the enemy. But by and large, the difference between a real premium solar panel and kind of the average state-of-the-art solar panel is maybe one more panel in the typical system.
Got it.
It's hard to merit a 30 or 40% premium for the top-of-the-line panels when kind of the average panels still have the same 25-year warranty, will deliver the same amount of power with perhaps just one more panel added.
Yeah.
You'll save money in the long run.
Yeah. Who do you see as do you have a typical consumer now? I mean, who do you see as the typical, is it just whoever needs one, but do you have a customer who's your customer now?
It's very interesting. In our area, I think it's different than many other areas, but we have a lot of people that move into this area that are thinking about retiring out of Silicon Valley,
right,
or wanting to get to their retirement home. The best time to buy solar for most of them is the year before they retire. And probably, I don't know, 75–80% of our customers are at that point.
Yeah.
See, there's tax credits that reduce the cost of solar. You can only take advantage of those tax credits if you're a
full-time resident.
If you got to pay taxes.
Got it.
Once you retire, your taxable income goes way down. Then you can have difficulty taking advantage of the tax credit to offset the system cost.
Can you front load some of those tax credits? That's why you were saying for the year before they retire. Is that where some of that?
You can carry some of the tax credit forward, but most people don't want to do that. They want to figure out, what do I need to spend today? And if you can take that tax credit right off the total when you buy it,
you're good.
That's better.
Yeah. We were getting a little bit about the business for the business customers, for the public safety power shut off and stuff. So if you need a mission critical, are you seeing an increase in, I guess, more like mission critical use, to where you need to keep a business alive, you need to keep crash registers alive and that type? Are you seeing more of that now?
We are. As a matter of fact, Mark at the Glass Doctor came to us recently and said, when the power goes down, my phone stops working, my internet stops working.
You're dead.
Said, I can't do anything.
Yeah, you're
I think
dead.
that was his comment. Well, he didn't want to spend enough money to keep his whole facility working on battery backup. He certainly was interested in having an auxiliary power source that was strong enough to keep the communications equipment working. Basically, allow his people to go to work, still talk with customers, and book the business.
So maybe without a house-sized unit rather than a business-sized unit, so to speak, to keep some of it alive type of stuff?
That's almost exactly what we did for Mark. We put in a bigger system overall, but took part of it and gave it battery backup.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the businesses like 7-Elevens, grocery stores,
refrigeration equipment stuff, it's just...
Grocery stores use so much power.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. In most of the grocery stores we've looked at, if you completely covered their roof and a good part of their parking lot with solar, it would only cover about 1/3 of their bill.
Right.
Those businesses, they need a backup generator.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, because, they're almost, they just got to flip the switch and pay the fuel bill, right? Isn't that on those?
It's a pretty significant bill, yes.
I guess on that note, as far as cost, KW cost, as far as, are some of the solar systems now, if you average out their cost over the life, are they cheaper now per KW than what you'd pay for a PG&E, per KW? How's the KW price working now?
It's quite interesting. I like to use the monthly payment for solar and contrast that to the PG&E bill.
Right.
Because if you put in a system that let's say, can zero your PG&E bill, you're trading your solar payment, which is new, for the PG&E bill, which is going away.
Right.
So the question is, when that's all done, are you paying more or less per month? For the average family of 4 that I spoke about earlier, typically the payment for a solar system, if you finance it, will be about half.
Oh, really?
What your PG&E
so even
bill
you can have some immediate savings as well. So the payment's going to be less than what your bill.
Virtually guaranteed. Yes.
And then it's an asset that you own because you know,
it's very much like a kitchen remodel.
Okay.
It's a part of the house now. It affects the cost of ownership of the house, and it has equity, adds equity
Sure.
to the house.
Typical loan length is what are you looking at?
We model after 20 years.
Okay.
One of the local businesses, local banks here has just an outstanding home equity program, and we sold a solar system to one gentleman that used the Umpqua Bank loan program, and we had to go back later. He needed more solar, and I started talking to him about the merits of increasing his system size, and he kind of calmed me down. He says, "Yeah, solar stuff is great, but I tell you, that loan I got, it was fabulous." And it was in those days about 3%.
Right.
And he used that to put in his solar system and kept using it for other things. And at 3 or 4% compared to the ever increasing cost of your utility bill.
Yeah.
You know, the utility companies are very fast to tell you that rates only go up, 1 or 2% per year. But if you look at the dollar amount that you're writing to them this year compared to last year or the year before, it's in most cases far exceeds 10% increase.
And I did some numbers. I know this veers off subject a little bit, but during the public safety power shutoffs, I ran some numbers of. I know PG&E's trying to exit bankruptcy, but I ran some numbers on the total indebtedness and then how much they would have to raise the kilowatt hour to actually take care of that, and it didn't pencil. None of it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't pencil ever, and that was my thing to where, if we can get back in some of the solar stuff, I mean, price per kW stuff. I mean, because I don't see how it's ever. I mean, I don't see how they ever penciled it out as far as needing to make improvements in the system, all the rest of it. I mean, I know the government's probably just going to bail it out and zero some of that off. But if they looked at in paying off the indebtedness, it was like, this is never going to happen.
Yeah, if you look at the cost of the previous fires and,
yes.
and what that reflected forward meant as cost to the utility to consumers, it was like $1,200 a consumer. Mm-hmm. That was the previous fire, and the new ones were 3 or 4 times more expensive. So I think your point is exactly right. But in my opinion, the utility companies are or could get into what some people call a death spiral.
Right.
If things get to the point where 10 or maybe even 15% of their customers defect and say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to go off grid or build a community solar system and power everything locally.
The microgrids type of stuff. Yeah.
Thanks for the word. Once that departure happens, then the utilities have a real major problem on their hands.
I guess we need to stick on subject, but I was wondering if Kirkwood, which was running their own system for so many years, they finally just tied into PG&E several years ago. Mm-hmm. You kind of wonder now, it's like, well, maybe this wasn't the...
Yeah, well, Kirkwood had some real challenges for sure, but in our area, in Calaveras in particular, we frequently are approached by people that are going to build new homes. Yeah. And in years past, it might cost $10,000 or $20,000 to run the power lines from the edge of your property to where it needs to be to your house site, say. These days, it's not uncommon for that to be $100,000. So now you're comparing the cost of one of the most expensive battery-based systems that you can imagine to a $90,000 or $100,000 investment in the power grid.
So are you seeing more truly the off-grid system, so to speak? And
Absolutely.
You're seeing more?
We are.
Okay.
Because if they pay the $100,000 just to pick a number to the utility company to run the power poles, they've really just anteed into the game. Now they get to send them a check every month for their power. At least if they purchase their own solar system with battery backup to be off-grid, they may have spent the same $100,000 even, but they don't have to send a $200 or $300 check every month. Right. After that to keep the lights on.
And aesthetically, they don't have the poles running to their. I mean, in some ways, it's an aesthetic benefit as well if you don't have.
Solar panels are beautiful.
Well, especially but I mean, lots of times Power pole, solar panel.
Okay,
I guess if we're going to start some of the basics there, what's the price range for a consumer? I mean, if they're going to if they're going to put solar on, what are the I mean, what?
So the first thing that we need to understand and sort of talk about
Sure.
with the customers is, if you want to put solar in, do you want to put solar on your roof? Do you have a good south or west facing roof? What I call a hot roof.
Sure.
And most people, they recognize it. They say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that roof over the living room,
Mm-hmm.
we cook in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a good hot roof, got good sun exposure, putting the solar array on the roof of the house is the cheapest installation method.
Because the structure's already there, all you need to do is
we
put
just
it up.
screw it onto it,
Yep.
and we don't have to build anything.
Yep.
The second least expensive option is to do a ground mount system. Perhaps we trench away from the house 100 or 200 feet, pour some concrete, set some poles up, build the solar array right on a ground mount structure. Certainly viable,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you can tolerate the view of it
Right.
from your front window. That
Right.
may be a good solution. The third one, and this is relatively new because we've been working really hard to put it in place, is you can install solar on your carport. So you can buy a carport from us or others, and we actually have metal roofing that includes the solar panels.
Oh,
It's kind of like some of the solar roof Tesla's been talking about,
right.
but ours are really big sheets.
Which seems more practical rather than,
Yeah.
right.
And the nice thing about that system, it didn't take any more ground space than a ground mount.
And you have
And
a
you
carport.
got a carport.
And you got a carport out of
And
the deal.
it's watertight.
Got it.
So people use them for all kinds of stuff. Sometimes they put animals in them. Other times they just put walls on them and use them to protect their toys from the elements.
So that's kind of
So those are the three choices,
Sure.
generally speaking.
sure, for a size that large enough for an off-grid system type of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. Cost. What are we looking at? I know that's I know if it's cheaper than the PG&E, then there's a net savings. There's not a out-of-pocket month. But I guess what?
Probably your average rooftop system, you would be looking at somewhere between probably $14,000 and maybe about $20,000, depending on the size.
Got it.
And then that you finance generally,
Sure.
kind of no money down type of thing.
And that would be the system that doesn't have a storage component, and then you start adding on storage. I'm just trying to. Is that
The first part of your statement is correct.
Okay.
That is the spin your meter backwards
the
system.
generating component?
Somebody would
Yeah.
buy if they just wanted to reduce their electric bill. They don't get any battery backup in that scenario.
Right.
Now, if someone is potentially interested in battery backup now or in the future, this is where we have to have a discussion about getting the right equipment to start with that you can add batteries to later.
Got it.
Probably the most frequent lament that we see is people that have put in solar in the last maybe 5 years, and now they want to add batteries to it, and they realize you can't add batteries to that old inverter. You actually have to take out the power inverter that you purchased, replace it with one that's battery capable.
That goes to the intelligence component of it, to where the inverters and the charge controllers, they need to be new enough to be able to work for.
They need to be designed to operate from batteries.
Got it.
The traditional power inverter, if you will, operates directly from the solar panels. The inverters with battery backup actually operate from the batteries. It's pretty much a completely different
Sure.
beast inside the box.
So some of the original systems then were basically designed to spin the meter back, but they weren't the power system. Where the newer ones, it's it's your own power system, so to speak. Is that
It can operate independent of the grid.
right?
The spin your meter backwards type of systems must have the power grid. When the grid goes down, those systems stop producing power.
Yeah.
And they won't backfeed for 5 minutes typically, and after the power comes back, because they don't want to shock the linemen that
Right.
are trying to
Right.
repair the lines.
Right. So there's we've got 5 minutes left, and so I guess the pitch to customer walks in the door. What's the elevator pitch to them? How do you walk them through the new customer?
The most important question to answer is, what's your objective?
Right.
Because if you want batteries, if you don't want batteries, are you going to stay in your house for a long time? what's your trend in demographics? Do you have a house full of toddlers that are going to grow to be teenagers? You should not skimp on the solar system. Right. You should buy a bigger system. If you're elderly and you're transitioning into the retirement years, believe it or not, you will use more power as you get older. So we need to talk about those things so that we get a system that's of the right type, right, and of the right size to really have the customer be happy over the long term.
Yeah. The cost and the battery storage systems now I know there's different manufacturers. Do you use like a Generac or a Tesla Power Store? I mean, what components do you?
It's pretty interesting. It might be a longer than a 5-minute discussion, but generally speaking, the Tesla Powerwalls of the world, as they're marketed to the consumer marketplace, are for short-term backup.
Got it.
2 hour, 3 hour period of time. If you want to keep your battery or your power on through the night, you need a much bigger battery. And we actually manufacture the battery banks at our facility in Jackson.
Oh, very nice.
We have the battery cables, the towers, the expertise to actually build you a 20 or a 40 kilowatt hour battery. Wow. Just, the typical smaller batteries, they might be 5 kilowatt hours.
Sure. Yes.
But if you're going to be off grid, you need between 40 and 60 kilowatt hours of battery. So they're not apples to apples, they're apples to oranges. You really got to figure out.
So you get the industrial components and then you just scale them up to what
we're quite a significant importer of equipment ourselves. Yeah. And then we build the system, if you will, from the components.
One thing, a little quick that we hadn't talked about, let's say, if somebody's got a new RV that they want to put a system on, or a small off-grid cabin stuff, is that stuff that you do as well, or you want to stick with the standard?
We do RV solar installation. There's some of the more picky things to deal with because people bring their $100,000 babies in, and you're going to drill a hole in this cabinet. It can be a slow adjustment or a slow process, but we do it. Okay. Personally, my RV has a lot of solar on it because I like to stop and park where I want to stop and park, so we do that. Cabins, when the marijuana business was booming here, we did a lot of business to bring power to places where PG&E could not give them power. Right. So we've done tops of containers, we've done ground mount, we've done small cabins for vacation homes.
I think we're just about running out of time there. Thank you. Thank you for the information. This is something I think is timely needed. And also, you're based in Jackson. You cover most the mother lode counties. Is that?
We do. We reach just about over into the Bay Area from here. Okay. We've got several work crews. We fan out. I like to tell people we're in the shadow of the hospital in Jackson. Got it. That sort of pinpoints us on the map.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. Okay.